Police moved in to clear a pro-Morsi camp of protesters, killing many unarmed civilians in what's been called the worst mass unlawful killings in the country's modern history. There's lots of dispute about what exactly happened. Today, 25 Egyptian policemen were killed in the Sinai Peninsula. Some reports saying they were lined up and executed. Meanwhile, a lawyer for the ousted President Hosni Mubarak says he hopes the former leader could be freed within days, maybe even today. What will that mean if he's released from prison? Is Egypt descending into civil war? What can the West do about this? It's a very complicated situation. To help us understand it, I'm joined in Toronto by Mohamed Al-Rashidi, Vice President of the Canadian Arab Federation, and Janice Stein, the Director of the Munk School of Global Affairs, our regular panelists when it comes to unlocking the mysteries of that region. Mohamed Al-Rashidi, unprecedented levels of violence. Just tell me, with what's happened in Sinai with the police officers, the reaction to what happened in Cairo, how do you read it? Is this a descent into civil war or what?
It's not a descent into civil war. It's very tragic to have the death toll rise to this level. You're referring to the Rabaa Square assault by the security forces on August the 14th. More people died on that day than the entire time from the beginning of the revolution in January 25th, 2011. So one day had more deaths than the entire time combined since. And unfortunately, one of the reasons for that, Evan, comes back to the Brotherhood not being as disciplined as it had been in the past and not keeping its protests free of weapons. And that's really the story that's playing out inside of Egypt. It's a different story outside of Egypt, but within Egypt there's a lot of support for the military and the police standing up to what they believe being an assault on the state.
But can you explain that? Are you suggesting, because the way it's played out here, as you know, it's a bit seen as a massacre, are you suggesting that this was some kind of battle with Morsi supporters who were armed, and they were simply responding with violence, even though it seems, I don't know how many police or government officials were killed, but we're talking about 1,000 people here almost.
Yeah, on that day, 43 police officers were killed, and you had the government say 265 protesters were killed. The Muslim Brotherhood was saying 2,200 were killed. So obviously both sides are lying. But when the death toll was somewhere in between. It's horrific. It should not have happened, and it should be condemned. But the reason this is very different from, say, all the protests that we've seen, Egypt has been in a perpetual state of protesting since the beginning of the revolution. I've been to Tahrir Square many times. They search me, they search everybody on the way in. The reason for that is the presence of a single weapon endangers everybody there, even if it's not directed at the people next to you. In the Rabaa Square and in those types of groups with the Brotherhood, they allowed AK-47s. We see the footage all over. They're firing at people, civilians, and that's what the General Sisi from the military really has been able to capitalize on, is to touch that very sensitive tone of Egyptians feeling under siege and threatened by the Brotherhood. And then you had a stage set up in Rabaa Square by the Brotherhood leadership, and unfortunately they went on there with microphones and announced some very troubling things, including statements about threatening Egyptians, making religious comments that essentially make all of Egypt an enemy. They would make comments like the fighting in Sinai, which had been going on for months.
And I get that. And let me get Janice Stein in here, because obviously I'm not sure whose side provoked what, although the reaction seems to be disproportionate to anything that anyone can say. Janice Stein, what's your reading on the impact of what's happened here?
I don't think there's much question that excessive force was used, and although I don't think we're on the verge of civil war in Egypt, I do think that this level of violence in the heart of Cairo is unprecedented for modern Egypt, and actually deeply disturbing, because Egyptians take pride. They take pride in the fact that their army does not fire on civilians, and they take pride in the fact that, unlike many other parts of the Arab world, they don't kill each other. So I think it's very dangerous to underestimate the trauma of what's happened in the last week or so. And I think you're right too, Evan, that there's a mythological quality to it afterwards. So the Muslim Brotherhood is not going to go away. If anything, it's a well-organized movement. It will go underground, and even if it leaves the streets for a while, it will find other ways to respond to the regime. The bigger worry is whether the military, who used excessive force, there's no question about it, can turn now and credibly commit to elections, to a political process, and actually say to the Muslim Brotherhood, run in the elections. You know, your political party, your political arm should run in the elections. Because why would the Brotherhood believe them, given what's gone on in the last week?
What about the regional resonance of this? I mean, Janice, you talked about how this may, you know, like Bloody Sunday did in Ireland. I mean, these events they play out internally.
They do.
But now, of course, they've got support. You know, Saudi Arabia's role against the Muslim Brotherhood, the U.S.'s role. I mean, Saudi Arabia gives $8 billion to Egypt. They're a big role. Mohammed al-Rashidi, how does this play out regionally?
Oh, it's going to have a big impact there. And Tunisia, first of all, would be the first in line here that is watching very closely. Because as you know, it was Tunisia and Egypt that were starting this Arab Spring. And Tunisia is now being ruled by the equivalent of the Brotherhood. And so they're watching this very closely. And the failure of the Brotherhood in Egypt will have ramifications in Tunisia and beyond. The Saudi reaction is really, Saudi Arabia has always been against the Brotherhood, but covertly. And now they've really stepped it up because they feel the situation is urgent. You got to look at Saudi Arabia as a kingdom that is surrounded now by a region that is engulfed with internal turmoil, and certainly Saudi Arabia does not have free and fair elections, so they do have reasons to fear this rise in popularity of the Brotherhood. But I think, Evan, it's important when you look at the region is to realize that domestically there is one perspective and internationally there's another. This is a very important point, that in Egypt, when we keep talking about civil war, Egypt is fairly united in this situation. They've been able to, the general's been able to bring people to rally behind him, and that's the reason we're going to see the fighting subside over the coming period. However, I agree with you, politically there is a problem because, as the professor said, the Brotherhood will have to be incorporated into the political process at some point.
Jess, in the last minute I've got with you, what about the West? The foreign ministers in the EU will meet later this week to discuss suspending aid to Egypt. Some have argued that Obama was wrong not to call this a military coup last month and cut off aid, $1.8 billion to Egypt, to the military. I mean, what can the rest of the U.S. do?
Since we have such a short time, I'm going to say it very succinctly. Don't hold your breath. I hate to say this is a conversation the West is having with itself. It really has no leverage. It's the Saudis and the Qataris and the Turks who are players in this game. And I think Obama really understands this. He's in front of two very, very bad choices with no good options.
Sorry, Jay, let me just follow up. The U.S. has influence in Saudi Arabia, though. Okay,
Yes.
so how does that work? What is the Obama and Saudi? Are they working together at all, or essentially has the U.S. influence essentially wiggled away to very little now?
I believe U.S. influence is much diminished, and always with the Saudis. This is not new, Evan. When the name of the game is regime survival, and for the Saudis, the brothers are a mortal enemy and have been for years, the Saudis will do what they think they need to do to preserve their regime. They always have, and they're doing it again now, and that's why you've got $8 billion going to Egypt.
That's right.
All right, I got to leave it there. I only, because of my deep respect for Janice Stein and Mohammed al-Rashidi, do I ask them to solve the problems of the Middle East in 10 minutes on a Monday afternoon. But listen, this is a very complicated situation. We'll be back to it as the days unfold, because this is really a game-changing situation
It
going
is.
on there. Janice
It
and
is.
Mohammed, good to see both of you.
Good to see you, Evan.
Still ahead on Power and